You know, this ephemerality, this vagueness about certain queries that come up um, at times, and you know, you're discombobulated. What do I say to that? Especially this third one, like, how are you? Nowadays, the way we experience time and space, how exactly do you honor that kind of question? I'm everything. I'm channeling everyone. I'm multiplicity. I'm contextuality. So, inner dance is one of those inquiries in many ways. Like, trying to put it into words is stuffing infinity in a box, or being asked to count the particles of sand exactly in 5 seconds, what might be contained in a big jar, for example. That's what it means when we say we can't put it into words. What we looked at last week as the unfoldment of mind through synchronic space, as opposed to the unfoldment of mind through diachronic time, through the video sharing that we went over regarding Amara's story. So to get to the bottom of meaning making as it comes to us now, especially looking at the ephemerality, the vagueness, the unfinalizability, the undefinability of certain concepts, we find out that the meaning comes more from the energy field, the energy of relationship, the way in which all things hold each other in place, which is how exactly we begin to understand language, how a baby might experience it, but also how we're experiencing it through these different possibilities in which we experience time. We're either slowing down time or we're accelerating time. In many ways, when you look at this point, we're even halting time, the shifting from the point of needing or wanting towards the point of pure being, the point of pure just having. Structuralism and deconstruction are two seemingly opposing lenses. They point to us a complementary binary, like 2 points that hold each other in place. Structuralism is very influential in sociology, anthropology, how we understand linguistics. Structuralism is a methodology that helps us to understand the elements of culture in terms of their relationship to a larger overarching system. What is structuralism? Um, Relates to what is mind as structure. So we've been looking at the semantic network, for example, quite a lot, and posited here the word structure as we understand the system through the founder of structuralism, whose name is Ferdinand de Saussure. If in the past videos we come to recognize the inner dance as a place or realm within the three orders of Jacques Lacan, that the inner dance is a return back into the world of the symbolic, coming from the imaginary as it journeys into the real. The inner dance conversation, just similar to the conversation of around structuralism, looks basically at how we stuff the universe, as you mentioned earlier, into a box, which is how the imaginary works. That, in fact, words are the representations of the multiple categorizations that allow networks of meaning to be held within time. Time is a storage mechanism, enfolded and unfolded synchronically, diachronically, in some kind of continuum. And that this is the world. Like, this is Maya, the world of illusion. This is the life world. This is reality as we know it. So it then makes sense to us What is inner dance? Why is inner dance? In relation to who am I? How are you now? As we go deeper into expanded states of awareness, the so-called fourth state of consciousness called the wakeful REM, we go into the meta structure that seem to pervade the endless stream of moments that are in fact just a constant stream of information we call time. Okay, so structuralism basically is the science of science. It's the inquiry into the realm of meaning, and thus meaning making, the chain of signification that is conducted every day, that we are shifting the way we understand all of it. So what is a sign, or what is a symbol? We might see that is a word, a combination, which is a combination of letters. It might be an image, just anything that represents something that underlies sign as we see it visibly or viscerally. So that when you look maybe at the word fruit, then somewhere in there is a concept of a fruit. And for you, when you look at this, maybe you're looking at a computer company, or you're looking at a kind of food. To a religion, for example, this connotes sin or knowledge or duality. They call it the fruit of the tree of good and evil, the tree of knowledge. So the signified is the blanket term that connotes that particular concept, and even here the concept of what holds the concept in place is the signifier. So we can see how maybe a sound or an image, and here we use a word, and this could very well have been the picture that connotes what the picture represents, gives us some kind of frame on certain things that we've been speaking about already, that this is what it means to shift into the symbolic, that symbols are the placeholders that draw upon the real, so that to be here gives you a sense that we are both here and here, meaning we live in a world that is not just literal, it's sequential. This is the world. Everything that we can touch, perceive with the senses is basically the signifiers, the representations, the systems that hold that which it points towards. And inner dance state is going into the deeper representations, the non-sequential, the parallel, the non-linear of what is beyond or what transcends the symbol or the sign. So this is how structuralism and inner dance meet, and very similar to how we've been looking at many of the mind models that we use so far. There is a feedback loop or an ascent or a descent in the way in which what is above interacts with what is below. It is only through the interrelationships of these two paradigms work upon each other in the endless chain of meaning making that holds the world at bay. So that, let's say there's so much talk right now on we are energy, but if we are energy, energy is light, or energy is electricity, and we find out energy is algorithmic, it is information, the world is made of language. We see now the importance of looking at the movement of mind or consciousness through time. It helps to define language as the repository of information that holds the density of what we define as the past. That language is the placeholder for the conceptualization, the categorization, through the power that analogy or metaphor brings to us. Now, looking at deconstruction, it is the work of a French philosopher named Jacques Derrida, whereby we see how structuralism takes on a new turn, seemingly almost deconstructive, but deconstruction actually is synthetic by nature, meaning it doesn't deconstruct as much as it leads to the new creation of new terms, new concepts, will be opposed by other concepts, marking their difference in some kind of eternal interplay. Well, deconstruction doesn't actually mean demolition. Instead, it means the breaking down or analyzing something to discover the true significance, which is almost never exactly what the author intends. For example, look at these two terms, light and dark. There is a sense of tension, opposing forces that separate these two things, and that brings us back into how the symbolic comes into interplay, that separates or keeps at bay both the realm of the imaginary, as he went over previously, and the world of the real. So that the symbolic, if it is placed here, then if we look at absolute truth, there is no such thing as the neither or. There is no choice. There is no avenue for separating one from the other. Whereas here, there is no space that holds the possibility where fragments are seen as one or the whole. So we needed this mediation, this intermediary realm called the symbolic, in order to hold things together. So it was in many ways inevitable that deconstruction comes up seemingly post-structuralist, but in fact, in many ways, complete each other. They synchronically come up at the same time. So this is one oversimple way to describe basically what Jacques Derrida is saying. And we've been talking a little bit about this. We often think that words mean what they mean in a positive way, but we start to understand how words have more meaning through negation, that the only way in which one word could exist is through the coexistence of the other. Otherwise, there is no energy bed, or there is no context upon which one relates to the other. Let's say you are in a million years only in daytime. There was no such thing as the sun goes down and we are cloaked in the darkness of the night. There's none of the tension, the symbolic space that holds the irony, paradox, the impossibility of being both in the realm of the real and the realm of the imaginary. This is where we see exactly why we bring up the unfoldment of our history, because we do get a sense of who am I, like who are you, what is inner dance, what are you doing here. We're mapping it through blanket points that scoops all pervasively, ubiquitously across different points, different genres, different classifications. They're beginning to overlap and they're beginning to complete each other. And this is the language of the language. It's the meta-language. It's the meta-system. So, okay, we're going through all these different systems, but in many ways you cannot actually go into meta-systems without understanding how the systems are at work. And that's basically even how education system probably has weaned us into the imaginary, that each of the subjects that we took up in school and each of the chapters of each subject are systems that now converge into each other. Science, spirit, history, they all collide or converge into each other. Structuralism and deconstruction in many ways are very critical outlooks that helps us to understand the textuality of inner dance that is just becoming more and more vivid and more brilliant as each day passes. Okay, so by way of closing today's journey so far, there are many things that collide or converge in how inner dance seems to tie in so much of how deconstruction is embedded in these upward and downward motions that might maybe even look like a helix, like an internal interplay of signification, holding patterns And we have to ask ourselves, like, what is the whole point? Like, what is happening here? We get a sense of how we're here to break patterns. We're here to create a sense of newness. And inner dance almost brings to bear feedback that supports both structuralism and deconstruction, especially living in a world where our attachment to the literal, the awareness of the world as a whole bunch of sounds and images that we seek to control, that we seek to hold on to, that we seem to wish to be presented to us through a chain of sameness. We now enter into a part of our history where we break apart this chain, this upward and downward chain of meaning making, and in a sense maybe redesigning or reconstructing the world anew. And so in a way we celebrate the inner dance as the journey back to the one that brings us back to Genesis in ways that new significations, new ways of embedding signifieds into the signifiers. And were that to be true, there is no signifier, in fact, that rightfully signifies the transcendental concepts, the blanket terms, the overarching sense of who we are that comes to us greatly feedback through so much of the inner dance experiences that have been observed, almost speaking to us in ways that remind us of where we came from, and that this Genesis is also where we are heading back to, what we are calling the world of the real. So in closing, I would like to share the very first video documentary that I ever put together. This happened in Baguio City in the Philippine mountains in Luzon. So until the next, thank you for being.
After a while, there was no more me. It was all that bright, and I wanted to hold on to me, no? Parang in my, but I could not. I was no. It was like parang I was hearing a voice, let go. Just let go of yourself. And then, even if I had tried, I could not get hold of myself anymore. Even when you were touching me, wala ako. It was all in that brightness, no? In that shimmering thing.
I just felt, I saw myself, it's not clear, it's a very bright place, and I'm there, and I have light here and light here, and I was looking around me, and I could see both of you with light here and light here also, and it was very bright, like you said, and it was just coming out of us, and for some reason there was a phrase that kept on repeating itself to me. And then it said, I am loved and nurtured by the universe. Paulit-ulit lang siya, I am loved and nurtured by the universe.
But this time, I had such a feeling of warmth, and I could feel it physically. It was so physical, in my arms especially, and here in my chest, in the middle, I felt it. And then this gesture would make it even warmer. And it came to a point that it even reached my toes.
I saw that.
And it filled me up inside. It was just a peaceful kind of warmth. Warmth that, parang in front of a fireplace when it's so cold and you feel And it's just there, and the environment is the same, it's still cold, but I felt it for a long time. And then it would get cold again, and then I would get it again for a couple more times. So it was a good feeling, a feeling of calm.